Hi, and welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Today on the show, we have Shira Shiloah. She is an anesthesiologist and she wrote the Kevin MD article, Second Victim Syndrome, the Pain of Unexpected and Tragic Deaths Lingers with Physicians. Shira, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin, for inviting me to speak with you. It's absolutely an honor to be here.
We'll get into your article in a little bit, but first off, can you share your story and your journey to where you are today?
Sure, I'm happy to. I'm an anesthesiologist and an author. I went to medical school at the University of Tennessee Medical in Memphis. I completed my anesthesiology residency at Northwestern in Chicago. I've been in my hometown practicing private medicine, private anesthesia at Medical Anesthesia Group for the past 17 years. Since graduating residency, I practiced general anesthesia as well as obstetrics, regional, thoracic, neuro, and pediatric anesthesia. I also teach resident doctors as well as student nurse anesthetists from the University of Tennessee. During my time as an anesthesiologist, I've also pursued my passion of writing. So the first short story I wrote, Kevin, was about a patient encounter before surgery. And it actually won third place at this National Writing Conference for Physician. And it encouraged me to continue my writing and take it more seriously. So I attended multiple writing conferences and novel writing intensives. And I immersed myself in the writing community, which is the best community, in case you're wondering, the writing community. And my most recent conference was before the COVID lockdown, was Dr. Julie Silver's Harvard Writers, which you're probably familiar with. She helped me utilize social media as well as begin a blog that combines my passions and my health and writing. So I went part-time in 2017, and it allowed me to finish and complete my debut medical thriller, Emergence.
Wonderful. And tell me about how being a physician and your experience as being a doctor, how has that influenced your writing?
So it was the short story of my patient encounter that kind of started the whole writing journey for me. And, doctors, we see a lot, we experience a lot. I didn't see that the anesthesiologist story was told very well in any kind of fiction or any kind of thriller. There's lots of physician authors out there that are extremely talented. Tess Gerritsen, for example, is one of my heroes in the community, but there's not an anesthesiologist perspective. So I wanted to share that and share my story that way.
And how hard is it to write a novel? Did you have an English background or
Yeah,
did you
I
just learn?
did.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I always was a reader. I think to be a writer, you have to be a reader. You have to be an avid reader. And I was one of those kids who, would go to the library as a child and take 10 books home and read the first two within the day. And I was constantly reading my whole life. So as far as the difficulty level, it's very high. It's a huge learning curve. It took me 13 years to become an anesthesiologist, and it took me another 13 years to become a published writer. So I kind of joke 13 is the lucky number, especially for Jews here. Yeah. So yeah, English was always my first language.
All right, so let's transition now into your Kevin MD article, and you can see that your writing skills shines through in this article.
Thank
And it's
you.
titled Second Victim Syndrome, the Pain of Unexpected and Tragic Death Lingers with Physicians. And I want to start by reading a short excerpt from your article. And you write, "We worked on you for hours, Terrell. I swear we tried. With 14 units of O negative, surgeons explored your wounds. They clamped your major arteries until your heart failed and we watched you leave us. I was a medical student. Close him. Learn how to suture. Tears rolled down my face. Your blood had not yet dried on my legs. Tomorrow's paper would bury you on A22. North Memphis. Man shot." Now, those are powerful words. And for those who haven't read the article, can you just walk my audience through it and share the story of why you decided to share it?
Yes, thank you, Kevin. So that was written as a medical student in 1998 at University of Tennessee at the Med Trauma Unit. And it was the first patient loss I'd experienced. And I wanted to share with the audience what it was like. I actually wrote that down in the call room that night. and never thought about that piece again and stuck it in. I think I found it recently because of the COVID lockdown and the spring cleaning. I literally found it stuck in my yearbook from medical school. So I pulled it out and I looked at it, and I really just wanted to give that younger version of me a big giant hug.
Mhm.
You know, these occurrences happen to medical students, to residents. They happen to physicians, private practice. You had a recent, really wonderful guest on that talked about the shame after a patient loss. And all of that is part of our culture, unfortunately. There is a medical culture of silence. There is a medical culture of stoicism and kind of sucking it up. And I wanted to share with the audience, a lot of people don't even know in my community, in the medical community, that there is such a thing as second victim syndrome. I didn't learn about it till 2 years ago. And I wanted the audience to understand what nurses and doctors and anyone in the healthcare field can actually see and feel when there's a loss. And we really need to do a better job taking care of those people who have no outlet. And I wanted to, talk about that.
So, what does second victim syndrome? What does that mean to you?
I'm going to just, if it's okay with you to get it correctly, I just wanted to tell you exactly what second victim syndrome is. It's basically that feeling that you have of grief and of loss and of sadness that occurs when there's an unexpected or tragic event in the OR, and people take it to heart and they bury it within inside them, and you're kind of not really given an avenue of what to do with that. And you come home and your family tries to console you, but you're still dealing with everything else that you have in your life, other patients. You're still a mom, a sister, a wife. You still have to take care of your parents. You're always being pulled in lots of ways. And I feel like the work stress isn't necessarily addressed the way it should be addressed at work. I don't think that us cohorts talk about it with each other. I think you move on to the next case, like in that situation that I wrote about. I did address in the article other instances where there was a baby that died of necrotizing colitis. And I also talked about an unexpected middle-aged man who died on induction of anesthesia. I talked about the shaken baby syndrome of seeing a 2-year-old who was the age of my niece, who was there for organ harvest, and that tore me up. There's things that we see that stay with us, and I wanted to talk about it with the audience and maybe give some ideas and suggestions on how to handle it.
So, tell me about some of the feelings that you had, some of the emotions that you had, and what you thought after these tragic events occurred.
I would say grief and knowing and empathy and thinking of my own family and hurting for the families that lost that patient. That would be number one. There's always the shame. There's always could I have done something different? Is it my fault? What did I do wrong? What would I do different? Did I miss something? There's an obsession that occurs, honestly. There's an obsession that you go back over the chart and you just with fine, just like so carefully going through every little thing. What did I miss? Did I miss something? Could I have prevented this? If I had been a better doctor, would this not have happened? These are all feelings I think everyone shares. They just don't talk about it.
So, you mentioned that the culture of medicine generally doesn't talk about second victim syndrome. It doesn't really address these emotions that you're sharing after a tragic event. So,
Yeah.
in an ideal world, what should medical institutions do?
That's such a good question, Kevin. That's such a good question. So I can only tell you what helps me and what has happened for me that has been the most helpful with this. Number one, I think everybody in medicine should have a therapist. I have had a therapist, either not a psychiatrist, but a psychologist, who I've talked to my entire medical career. She was actually one of my teachers in medical school, and then she went on to become my therapist throughout 15 years or so. She's wonderful. I honestly think everybody should have a therapist to talk to. And especially now during this time of COVID, we owe them a huge debt of gratitude for helping manage the stress of the job. I think that we should be more open when we are hurting at work. I think it should be allowed to cry. I don't know why we're taught to be stoic and not to be empathetic. If you need to cry at work, you shouldn't apologize for it. It's a lot of sad stuff that we see. And
Mhm.
if you need to go off in a corner with a friend, with a colleague and talk about it, do it. It's okay.
We're talking to Shira Shiloah. She is an anesthesiologist, and she wrote the Kevin MD article, Second Victim Syndrome, the pain of unexpected and tragic death lingers with physicians. When a physician undergoes a tragic event, or if they have an unexpected event happen in the hospital, whether it's their patient or whatnot, what's some advice that you could share with them as to what to do next?
Okay. Number one, allow yourself to grieve. Allow yourself to grieve any loss, be it a patient, be it a family, be it a friend. The culture of medicine, like I said, is the culture of silence, and this is what's hurting our physician mental health. I wanted to share with you, Kevin, that there have been, the statistics currently are 300 physicians die by suicide a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's 2 full medical school classes a year that die by suicide. They don't commit suicide. It's not a felony. They didn't commit a felony. They die by suicide. And there's it's so upsetting on so many levels that we're not doing a better job to protect physicians and to protect nurses too that are dealing with these stressors. So I would say number one, grieve. Allow yourself grief. Allow yourself to feel that loss. Acknowledge it. Talk to someone. If you need to address it with somebody in the hospital, like a chaplain, or your rabbi, or those avenues are available. I can tell you right now, I had a very difficult situation where we lost somebody at the hospital, somebody I knew very dearly, and I was so emotional. And the chaplain came and he sat with me, and I'm a Jew. It didn't matter to me that he was that he was the chaplain. He was so comforting, and I highly recommend that avenue if you need it. There's no reason not to take advantage of the people that are there to comfort you and help you.
And my final question, what's your take-home message that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience?
I think I said it. Okay, my take-home message is take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Allow yourself to put your priority, your mental health as a priority, your health as a priority. You can't take care of others without taking care of yourself first. I can't stress that enough. You need to take care of, and also I want to tell the young people out there, the medical students out there, don't stop creating. Don't stop being outside of the hospital, something besides a physician and a medical student. Don't put all that on the back burner. If you're a creative person, continue to write. If you're a musician, continue to play music. If you enjoy reading, make time to read. If you enjoy painting, make time to paint. Don't put everything on hold. You're allowed to be a whole person, not just a physician or a medical student.
Well said. Well, thanks again for sharing your story, time, and insight. And thanks again for being on the show.
It's just such an honor. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you for what you do to share our stories.